So Mesut Ozil doesn't take kindly to club legends getting on his back, even after he waltzes around the Anfield turf, tumbling to a 4-0 defeat without breaking a sweat. Anyway, let's take a look at each Premier League side and the club legends who have supposedly criticised them in recent years. Warning, you may require a thicker skin than Mesut. Arsenal, Ian Wright. So we might as well start with the man who inspired this video. Ian Wright's never usually won the whole back. If he wasn't Arsenal's second highest goal scorer of all time with 128 goals, he'd probably be outside the Emirates most week balling into Robbie's mic. He's upset Ozil during the last week after lambasting his former club following their dismal 4-0 defeat at Anfield, in which the German was about as much use as a glass hammer. Despite spending 3 years under Arsene Wenger's stewardship, Wright is now claiming the Frenchman has lost the dressing room and needs to get out of the club as quickly as he can. Hashtag DT. Bournemouth, Eddie Howe. Yeah, it might be cheating, it's the manager. What boss doesn't criticise his own team from time to time? But find me a bigger legend in recent years than Eddie Howe. A man who's not only played over 200 games for the Cherries, but has spent 9 years managing them. Let's just ignore that time he lost his mind and went to Burnley. Taking them from a minus 17 points deduction in League 2 to mid-table in the top flight, on a shoestring budget and all before the age of 40. Don't be surprised if there's a statue of this man in a few years. Anyway, after their recent 3-0 loss to Arsenal, Howe chastised his team, claiming his side need to show more character and what they're made of. Today you didn't see a Bournemouth team that represents what we stand for. Brighton and Hove Albion? Nobody. It's not that Brighton don't have club legends, they do, but considering the Seagulls are riding the crest of a wave into the top flight, having circled the drain in the Championship only 3 years ago, everyone is keeping fairly quiet about criticising the work of Chris Hughton, and who could blame them? Burnley, Stan Ternent. Stan Ternent may have played 5 times for Burnley back in the 60s, but it was his 6 years as manager between 1998 and 2004 which pretty much carved him in claret folklore, winning promotion to the old First Division in his second season. However, he was not impressed with his old club's antics when they finally battled their way back into the top flight back in 2009. The Clarets allowed Owen Coyle to scuttle off to Bolton in January before Brian Laws came in and torched his good work as they sank like a stone. At the end of the season, Ternent claimed, "It's the way they've been relegated that concerns me. The general consensus is that they've gone down without having a go." Chelsea, Frank Lampard. Yep, I can just tell this one's going to go down well with the Chelsea fans. To be fair, Frank Lampard, the Blues' all-time leading goal scorer, bleeds dark blue, despite a weird 9-month affair in Manchester, and you can't blame the man for lambasting the Blues when they were languishing in the bottom half of the table in February 2016, less than a year after winning the league. Then at New York City FC, Lampard claimed their position of 11th was ridiculous, he wasn't wrong, and that the club were lacking real personalities. Crystal Palace, John SALAKO. Crystal Palace might be having a rough time of it at the moment, but there's one thing they're usually universally praised for, having a great fan base. John SALAKO, a man who spent 9 years at the club, wasn't having any of it though. According to him, the Palace fans are never patient, claiming that they should be pinching themselves and thanking their lucky stars for even being in the top flight. I bet that went down a treat, with a side that are in their 5th consecutive Premier League season. Everton, Kevin Ratcliffe. When David Moyes was announced as the successor to Sir Alex Ferguson in May 2013, many were in shock, not least because the former Everton boss hadn't won anything in 13 years. Kevin Ratcliffe though, a defender who spent the first 12 years of his career at Goodison Park, was not enthused. He blasted chairman Bill Kenwright for allowing Moyes to leave, claiming the club should have at least had him sign a contract so as to avoid losing him on a free. According to Ratcliffe, it was Moyes who pulled the strings and not Kenwright. It's 4 years later, Everton have a supremely gifted boss, and Moyes is probably sitting at home watching Jeremy Kyle most afternoons. So it all worked out. Huddersfield Town, Sean Jarvis. Okay, so Sean Jarvis is not going to get a statue built anytime soon. He's a commercial director at the club. But you try and find a Huddersfield Town legend that has anything bad to say about the club over the last few years. The closest gripe was Jarvis slamming fans who criticised the new kit this summer, taking to Facebook to ask that whoever was calling for the designer to be sacked to please unfriend me. He went on to continue his passionate rant, claiming, "If you don't like it, don't buy it." I'm sure he was subsequently inundated with concerned messages of, "You okay, hun?" Leicester City, Gary Lineker. If ever there's going to be a Leicester City legend who has something to say about the club, it's going to be the lad who appears every Saturday evening on the most watched highlights show in the nation. After criticising the club's decision to sack Nigel Pearson and replace him with Claudio Ranieri in the summer of 2015, citing it as an uninspiring choice, he was left calling the decision to remove the Italian less than 2 years later as very sad, inexplicable, and that it even moved him to tears. But then of course he was reminded of his BBC salary and all was right with the world again. Liverpool, Jamie Carragher. Jamie Carragher, when is he not criticising Liverpool? The one club man Champions League winner has been spending retirement savaging Liverpool's defence, taking Twitter battles too far and getting creeped out by Thierry Henry's advances. But to be fair, he's got a point where the Reds are concerned. In his debut season as a Sky pundit, he wrapped up the season with a stinging attack on both Martin Skrtel and Mamadou Sakho, after watching them chuck away a 3-goal lead at Selhurst Park to set their title bid in flames. Defensively, they're not up to being Premier League champions. They always concede together. It's not good enough. That final 20 minutes was unacceptable. The back four have shown they can't cope with pressure, they're not leaders. Carragher spent 5 years playing alongside Skirtle, so I'm guessing they no longer grab a beer down the pub. Man City, Mike Summerbee. Wilfred Bunny might be beloved in South Wales, but he had the support of pretty much nobody in Manchester ever since he lumbered into the Etihad 2.5 years ago, with a price tag almost as frightening as his inability to break into even the lightest sweat. It didn't take long for City fans to turn on him, but this didn't go down well with Mike Summerbee, who played over 300 games for the club during the 60s and 70s, demanding in his programme notes that the fans stop, claiming they were picking on him. Now Boney may have been dying of embarrassment on the bench, as Summerbee's notes read like an obituary, reeling off former terrace heroes who started slowly, claiming the Ivorian was ill during the summer, and that he was sure he would find his feet and start scoring goals before long. Long story short, he didn't. Man United, Roy Keane. Roy Keane was criticising his club while he was still a Manchester United player, so is this a surprise? The Irishman has been launching attacks on prawn sandwiches to his old boss, but it was the infamous MUTV rant that ended his 12-year stint at Old Trafford in 2005 that immediately comes to mind. Captain of England's most successful club, Keane did not hold back after being asked to give an appraisal of the side's 4-1 defeat to Middlesbrough. But the tapes were never released, consigned to the darkest recesses of Old Trafford, never to be found, along with Liam Miller's career. Newcastle, Alan Shearer. If you're being paid to sit a match of the day and watch Newcastle United every week, there's going to be some words. You don't find many bigger club legends than Alan Shearer. The Toon's record goal scorer with 206 goals is beloved by all on Tyneside, and he's been as dismayed as any by his side's capitulation in recent years. In the past, he's condemned the club's hierarchy, such as when they sold Andy Carroll with Shef Kikuchi lined up to replace him, but it was 2 seasons ago during the Steve McLaren era when he was at his most vitriolic. Hopeless, embarrassing, pretty much any superlative he could find that was safe to air on the BBC was levelled at his former club as they sank into the Championship. You can only imagine what he was saying to the class of '09 when he witnessed their relegation firsthand. Southampton, Matt Le Tissier. When Nigel Atkins was given the boot at Southampton in January 2013, eyebrows were raised, especially when he was replaced with some nobody from the middle of La Liga. Matt Le Tissier, who only ever played 8 times for his country, despite scoring 161 goals in 16 years for Southampton, slammed the disgusting treatment of Atkins, who had achieved back-to-back promotion with the Saints. After what he has done for the football club, he deserved to be treated better. No mention at all in the matchday programme was disgusting. Stoke City, Tony Pulis. Less than 4 months after Tony Pulis was sacked by Stoke City for a second time, Chairman Peter Coates was forced to introduce a gagging order to ban his players from rushing to the media to badmouth their former boss. I guess that's what happens when you headbutt your players in the shower. Allegedly, of course. Pulis, who guided the club into the top flight in 2008 and laid the foundations for their success, despite their style of play looking about as appealing as a plate of roadkill, was let go in 2013, but he was accused of having pops at his former side. In February 2017, Mark Hughes claimed that Ryan Shawcross received a voicemail from his former boss calling him a loser. Swansea City, Leighton James. There were many things about Bob Bradley's reign to terrify you if you were a Swansea fan, not least his insistence on abbreviating the word penalties. Leighton James, who helped Swansea from the 3rd division to the 1st during the early 80s, claimed last December that the silence from the club's owners after Bradley's sacking was frightening. They haven't said a word. The 3 Americans, you don't hear from them. Why? I would ask a serious question to the 2 owners and the chief executive. Where have you been in support of your manager? Because they've been deafening with their silence, and that's what frightens me most of all. Dramatic or what? Glenn Hoddle. Glenn Hoddle is a popular figure at White Hart Lane after excelling during a 12-year stint as player, but he's not afraid to put the boot in on his former employers. 3 years ago, Spurs were humbled 4-0 at Anfield, where have we heard that before, and claimed the players were too relaxed, too flimsy, and had no steel. Tim Sherwood hit back, saying it's been a long time since Hoddle had managed the football team. Tim, it'll be a long time before you manage another. Watford, John Barnes. John Barnes made his name at Watford, scoring 65 goals in 233 games, but it's 2017 and he's now struggling to comprehend how his former club have been managing to punch above their weight in recent years, despite treating their managers like used up Kleenexes. The Hornets are onto their 10th manager in as many years, but are currently a comfortable Premier League unit, something that bemuses Barnes. What I've always said about Watford is that they're successful in a way modern teams generally can't be, and I wouldn't recommend any club have that kind of philosophy. It's inexplicable, I don't know how they do it. Neither do I, but what I do know is that unless Marco Silva wins the league this year, I wouldn't go forking out on any properties in the area, and even then. West Brom, John Weil. Now it's common knowledge that an afternoon at the Hawthorn serves up about as much entertainment as a compilation video of the Antiques Roadshow, so maybe we shouldn't be too surprised that their club legends are voicing their disdain for Tony Pulis' snoozeball tactics. John Weil, centre half of 500 appearances for the club during the 70s, recently claimed it's been a chore to watch, claiming that Albion have got a tradition of playing up-tempo attacking football, and at the moment it's about as far away from that as you can get. West Ham, Billy Bonds. Billy Bonds, a man who spent virtually his entire career at West Ham and then 4 years of management at Old Upton Park, bleeds claret and blue, so when he voices his opinion, the fans usually listen. There was a lot of discussion about whether the move to the London Stadium was a positive one. According to Bonds, it isn't a football ground, seemed miles away from the pitch, and that it seems the players are on an island away from the fans. To be fair, with the way they're playing this season, maybe that's for the best. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.